Hi. Hello. Welcome or welcome back. Eventually I'll get a better intro. I'm just gonna YOLO this. It's fine. Just a fair warning. I guess a few things. This is about the new Hunger Games book, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I finished it last night in just like going for it because it suddenly really not it suddenly picked up speed, but it suddenly like switched, and I was like, well, no, I have to finish it. Finished it in a complete daze, not knowing what's happened, and was like, okay, I need to talk about this. And so this is not scripted, this is just going from the top of my head. I was thinking about what I wanted to say about it throughout the thing, I highlighted different pieces, but this is just gonna be me going. Also, obviously, spoiler warnings for Songbirds and Snakes, as well as all the other Hunger Games books. And if anything else comes up, I'll give a spoiler warning before that as well. Do you think it would be better to hold this instead? I might, because otherwise it rattles. Hopefully this is okay. So, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I was very, very hesitant to read it at all. I recently went through just kind of a depression read of the first two Hunger Games books, so Hunger Games and Catching Fire. Could not be bothered to do Mockingjay. I do not care what anyone else says, Mockingjay is not a good book. It's not. Mockingjay initially, this will come up later, but Mockingjay was my first DNF, do not finish. And it took me a few years to go back, and like when I reread the series, I was like, fine, I'll do Mockingjay. So I read Mockingjay all the way, and I was like, even with those few years like ahead of me, I was like, this still isn't good. Like, still isn't good. I understand the interesting political commentary on how Coin is obviously is the same as Snow. You have Prim dying, which still shocking. Suzanne Collins, how dare you? But I did not like it, Sam I Am. I did not like Mockingjay. And so the idea of a prequel to this series, when Mockingjay ended for me on such a bad note, I was like, this is not going to be good. And I wasn't going to read it. I heard about it when the book first came out, and I just let it brush over my head. I wasn't going to commit time to this book. I genuinely thought would not be good. Then the movie trailer dropped. I watched it eventually. I don't even know if I finished the entire thing, and was of course confused out of my mind. Funnily enough, I had started the book, I would assume after the trailer came out, but it was over the 2022 summer, which meant I forgot completely. When I got the book this time around, saw I was like 35% through, I was like, what the fuck? I had no idea. But obviously it must have been okay enough for me to get 35% through before all hell broke loose. So it wasn't until very recently where one of my friends was like, no, you have to read it, promise, it's good. And I was like, I don't know, I didn't like Mockingjay, I don't know about like a prequel, prequels usually aren't very good. And she was like, no, you'll enjoy it. I was like, okay, maybe. And then I met a few more people, some completely random, like at the bookstore, who were like, do you like Hunger Games? I was like, yeah. And they're like, you have to read it. Like, genuinely, you have to read it. And I was like, fine. So I finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I was like, okay, fine. We'll check it out. We'll give it a run, right? We'll see if I enjoy it. I don't know where I got this. Like a while ago, someone had hinted to me that basically they'd hinted that Snow was queer. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a read, if anything, to see if Snow is queer. Spoiler, he's not. It's very disappointing. We'll at least say we've read the book before the movie came out. Why did I like this book? Like, a lot. I would say Hunger Games still goes first. Mockingjay still goes last. And honestly, I'm in between Catching Fire and Songbirds. Fundamentally, I think they're about the same. Some scenes I would put better in Catching Fire, some scenes I would put better in Songbirds. But I enjoyed Songbirds, and I was so confused and baffled. I'm usually really hesitant about prequels, right? Because I think they tend to force story that wasn't initially there, and so they can either mess up the main stories or they can add characters that don't make sense. So for example, the two most recent ones, Rings of Power and whatever the other one was for Game of Thrones, dragons, I don't know, those two, pretty much not liked across the board, even if based on the books. So obviously Tolkien had this entire universe planned out from the get-go. The prequels added things that weren't necessary and also just weren't good. Plotting was off, the filming, that is a whole other thing. But across the bat, it wasn't a good representation of these series that are pretty beloved. I say that mostly with Lord of the Rings. I liked Game of Thrones, obviously what was it, season 8 caused hellfire. And so prequels to me are really, really sketchy. All that to say, that was one of the big things that I was suspicious about. And Sam Collins did a really good job. Sam Collins did excellent, and dealing with Snow was an interesting choice, but I think pretty perfect, because it's Snow young, and it's the capital young, and it gives us a version of the capital that we haven't seen yet. So obviously when we first meet Katniss, it's 74th and 75th Hunger Games. There isn't rebellious fervor yet, but she's obviously the spark. But the capital itself is so far ahead, and the capital is seen as such this powerhouse, obviously what it's meant to be, and the districts are still, for the most part, poor, and the Hunger Games is so well cemented in the society that it's hard to imagine a society where it's not like this. I think with just the first two books, I suppose, these games have been going on for absolutely ages, and at least for me, there was this idea of they've always been like this. The games have always been this extravagant thing, and there's like a couple lines throughout Hunger Games and Catching Fire where I think Katniss mentions how, the games need to be exciting. One of the years it was just a desert, and it wasn't very exciting to see a bunch of tributes just die of thirst. And so it's lines like that where you figure, okay, like, the capital still makes mistakes, but it was always this thing. The capital was always this standing ovation of just wealth. Whereas I think it's really interesting to see capital in the districts right after the quell of the rebellion. And so you see the capital in ruin, you see Snow and his family desperately trying to hold on to their name, to their wealth, in a world that is still devastated by war. And so even though you have this idea of the capital wins, and the capital does grow to be this monstrous thing, you still can't help but feel bad, obviously, for these worn-torn victims. And even though they're capital, you still feel grief. Tigress has a moment where she gets on Snow a tiny bit of, you don't remember everything, you don't know what I did to keep you fed, and it hints at her selling her body for food, for money. It's some of those lines where it genuinely hits on you. And while Tigress, she doesn't have an active negative role in the Hunger Games, it's things like these where you feel for the capital. You feel for the man who has to eat a dead person's leg, because even though we may revolt at it, the things you do when you're starving are completely different. And I guess with the districts as well, of course you feel for them. 13 has just been nuked. The readers know that they survived, but the rest of the capital doesn't. The rest of the districts, for the most part, don't. And then you still have 12 in ruins, essentially. And you also see the creation of the careers, who either sided with the capital or start to provide things like ammunition or food supplies, and so shot up their wealth. So Sejanus, I think, oh gods, if I pronounce names wrong, I'm so sorry, but Sejanus, with District 2, ammunition, and you see the rise of his family into capital, old versus new money, which is also an interesting conversation. Basically, you see both the capital and the districts as devastated, and even though the capital came up on top, there's still deep trauma and devastation littered throughout both capital and district. On that point, I think the strongest piece of Songbirds is how you feel for Snow. Snow, despite the fact that Snow is an awful, awful person who becomes game maker, he becomes, is it emperor? President? He becomes president of the capital, who every year for maybe 65 years, basically, while he's in power, who actively makes the capital what it is. You feel for him as a 17-year-old who is desperately trying to keep his family name alive, who is desperately trying to make sure he gets these opportunities to feed his family. There's the grandmam, there we go. There's the grandmam and obviously Tigress, and they're also both orphans. Snow talks a lot about bomb time and, you know, hiding under the table. There's the stress of losing the house and losing the name. And you want him to win. You want Snow to get back his money. And despite the fact that you know he does, you're still on the edge of your seat when Dean Highbottom sends him to be a peacekeeper. You're still on the edge of your seat when Lucy Gray thinks she's about to die. You want him to win badly. And that's how you know it's a strong character. Because you were rooting for this bad guy to win. I think he's a pretty perfect example of a morally grey character, and it becomes more so near the end of the book. So as we can focus on the first half for now, the games itself. So Snow and Lucy Gray and Snow's attempt to make her win. So the first half of the book follows Snow and Lucy Gray and the new kind of turn of the Hunger Games in which they start to become a more public spectacle. So for the first year, you have A. Flickerman, not Caesar, the other one, Lucky. You have Lucky Flickerman, and you have obviously the tributes, and you have mentors as well, and the beginning of being able to send food, bets, and all such. This is where you see the turn of the games as we know it in the main trilogy. Cheers. Snow needs to win these games. Not only does he need to graduate with basically all honours and teacher recommendations, he also needs to win the games, as that will allow him to get a scholarship to go to university. Once he's in university, he'll hopefully be able to get a job, go to government, and then pay for Tigress and the Grandmam, and in doing so, save the Snow name. Basically everyone but Dean Highbottom believes Snow is still this wealthy family. And so the moment that you A, meet Lucy Gray, and B, start to have the interactions between Snow and Lucy Gray, you're rooting for him, genuinely. You're rooting for them both, and you want him to win. That, of course, means the killing of 23 other kids, and as it quickly becomes clear, the killing of many, many mentors. You're still rooting for him. There are great scenes between Lucy Gray and Snow, especially near the beginning. They work together to present a unified front in a way that none of the initial mentors are doing. So at one point, Snow and Lucy Gray, they get dumped in Monkey Pit at the zoo, where eventually the arena will take place. And Snow in his clean polished uniforms, along with all the tributes, they are seen as animals, and Snow is among them. This capital boy who still has a name to lose is among the district. Slum. And there's brilliant lines from Lucy Gray of, own it, right? Own it. And you want him to. You want Snow to reveal this kind of charismatic self that will help him and Lucy Gray in the arena. There's always the hint in the background of this is how Snow gets as good as he does, because he learns not just from Lucy Gray, but from this entire mentor experience, how to put on a smile, how to win over people, how to use these bad situations to the best of his abilities, and that's what he eventually does, and he uses these skills to eventually become a tyrant. In the games himself, he cheats in several ways, putting a handkerchief in these dangerous snakes, hinting at Lucy Gray to poison the other tributes, etc., etc. And also the entire time, as the other tributes and as the other mentors are dying in various ways, you're glad. You're glad that they are. And even when Snow feels a guilt or feels an ounce of sadness, he's also glad to be able to check names off a list. And you are too. Every death is closer to Snow becoming a truly bad person. And you feel for Snow, you want him to win, nonetheless. When, of course, Lucy Gray and Snow eventually win, there's celebration, there's cheers, your heart is relieved. And then, Snow is called to Dean Highbottom's office, and Snow says something like, the meeting couldn't have lasted more than 5 minutes. and so the next thing he knows, he's going over to sign his name to the Peacekeepers. And your heart drops. Mine at least did. I was like, wait, what? But he won. He can get the scholarship. Now he can go reunite with Lucy Gray and keep her in the capital. Now Lucy Gray is safe, and she can move the Covey clan over to the capital, and now Tigress and the Grandmam are gonna be okay. He'll have the money. And in literally a paragraph, everything comes crashing down. And you feel for Snow. You are surprised. You are scared. What are they going to do? And that's not only a brilliant piece of writing on Colin's part, plot-wise, but also character-wise, because you've just seen this assassination of Snow's character when you've been rooting for him this entire time. You know it works out. You know it'll be okay. But you're still devastated with Snow. Basically, the second half of the book, or in the second environment of the book, takes place in District 12, with Snow as a peacekeeper. And this probably takes place over, it's about a month and a half, I believe. Things change incredibly quickly, and this is where you begin to see Snow's character as we know him in the main trilogy. But you're still rooting for him, and you still like him. So Snow becomes a peacekeeper in District 12, basically to try and reunite with Lucy Gray. He doesn't know what's happened to her, he doesn't know if she's still capital, or if she'll be killed or come back to District 12. But he hopes that by being here, he'll be able to stay with Lucy Gray, plus he'll be able to provide some money, as the Grandmam and Tigress have to forfeit the house. While Snow is a peacekeeper, he seems okay. You know that as a peacekeeper, your life will likely stay the exact same thing. You'll do the exact same thing every day. You'll get a bit of money, he'll send half of it to Tigress and the Grandmam, and he'll keep the rest of it, and on Saturdays, he'll be able to go to the Hob, trade it for liquor, and then go see whatever show is there. Spoilers, the Covey is there. And while he's disappointed, obviously, and you're disappointed as well, it creates a relief of he's no longer constantly vying for this scholarship. He's no longer constantly afraid and looking over his back at what Dean Highbottom, what's her name? You would think after all this time, always, what the Doctor is going to do to him. He's done with the games, and because this year in the games was so chaotic, he's sure that things won't change that much, and that's okay. And so that's how it goes. Until, on a Saturday, Snow goes to the market, almost gets raging drunk, but who could it be but Lucy Gray? And immediately, Snow is on his knees. He can't wait, he wants to meet up with Lucy Gray afterwards, but chaos breaks out, and after punching a few people, he eventually gets away and resolves to have to meet Lucy Gray another time. Once again, you start to see the kind of shift in Snow's perspective. This is where you see some influence from not only Dr. Gall, but also the games in general, and what Snow had to do, and you see Snow's changing mindset. Throughout the first kind of half, while Snow was mentoring the games, at one point he has to go inside the arena itself to save Sejanus, a mentor who is sick of everything against the capital, and has also had to mentor Marcus, who has tried to escape during a bombing, and then has gotten basically beaten to bits, hung up in the arena, and eventually killed. So Sejanus goes into the arena, kind of has a breakdown, and just waits to be killed. Dr. Gall and Dean Highbottom force Snow to go get Sejanus, and hell breaks loose. Some of the other tributes try to kill Sejanus and Snow, understandably so, and when they're running out, Snow beats a kid to death. And while it was self-defense, it's the beginning of the switch for Snow of chaos control and what the capital does to keep control over the chaos. This mindset only continues when Snow is in the district itself. So after Lucy Gray first performs and punches start being thrown, Snow is described as almost rabid. He just punches and punches. He doesn't know who he's punching at. He almost reaches towards his gun, to just fire blindly into the night, and afterward he wonders whether or not the same punches would have been thrown if the lights were on. And again, the capital is almost this light, right? Preventing the districts from just going wild, as well as preventing the capital from going wild as well. So Janice, at one point, arrives after his dad buys an entire gymnasium and some to send Sejanus to the districts instead. Sejanus is an interesting character. He's initially a district boy turned capital, but never really left the district mindset. He doesn't like the capital, he doesn't like what they stand for, hated the games, and fundamentally stayed district. And he wants to help. He wants to help the districts in a way that's actually beneficial, rather than throwing 24 kids in an arena and making them slaughter each other. He becomes a peacekeeper, and he wants to be a medic. That's his thing. He wants to actually help, but he can't be a medic without a war. And so eventually Sejanus decides to help some rebels run away. He helps to get them guns, ammunition, food, and he's going to leave with them. Now, Snow, throughout this entire time, knows Sejanus is up to something. He doesn't know what exactly, but between Sejanus hurriedly swiping away a map of the base, Sejanus hiding money, and slipping out of the bar to meet with rebels throughout the night, Snow knows in all likelihood he's once again going to defer to the districts instead of capital. And once again, Snow's true personality comes to light. Snow initially tries to just talk Sejanus out of it, but he does so by lying to him. Throughout the entire book, Snow is constantly told that he is Sejanus' best friend, that he's like a brother to Sejanus. But Snow resists this every time. Even if he doesn't say it out loud, the inner monologue suggests that Snow doesn't hate Sejanus, but he certainly doesn't feel like he's his brother. In fact, the kindness that Sejanus first took when he moved to the capital was just Snow being indifferent and not wanting to get involved. But when wanting to figure out what Sejanus is up to, Snow comes to Sejanus' side and says, "You know, you're like a brother to me, and I love you, and I just want to make sure you're okay." Now, this is a lie, we know this, and Sejanus takes it, and so later tells Snow of his plan, of breaking people out of the prison, running away to go north where there's rumors of people just staying out of capital's reach. We know this is probably District 13. I need apple juice. Unable to convince Sejanus otherwise, Snow takes one more step towards being fully capital and one more step to the Snow we know throughout the original trilogy. So while hunting Jabberjays, Sejanus comes up to Snow and says, "You are like a brother for me, and I feel bad lying. This is the plan." And Snow records it using a Jabberjay. There's a bit of inner conflict between Snow once Sejanus leaves, whether or not to send the bird away with the full recording or just erase it and go about his day. Snow does eventually send the bird back with the others, and while he tries to convince himself that it won't reach Dr. Gall, part of Snow knows that it will reach Dr. Gall, and that Sejanus will be punished for it, whether it's his father having to buy an entire other stadium to get Sejanus now out of the district and in some desk job, or if it's being hung for treason. With things like this, we start to see the true nature of Snow, how he'll sacrifice others to make sure he's okay and he's safe. And he'll sacrifice others for the greater good of the capital, not the districts, as initially it was when he was working with Lucy Gray. Throughout this time, Snow is seeing Lucy Gray, who lives with her family, the Covey, and their essentially found family. Lucy Gray has an ex-lover, Billy Top, who was cheating on Lucy with Mayfair, the daughter of the mayor. Mayfair, it doesn't seem like a nice girl anyways, and thus Lucy Gray dropped him and kicked him out of the Covey. Snow is incredibly jealous, and again we start to see slips of him during these interactions, and even before, whenever Snow thought of this mysterious man who Lucy used to see. His jealousy, however, is different than just being annoyed. He's aggressive, angry, and has to consistently remind himself that Lucy Gray dumped him. But even things like meeting at the hanging tree bugs Snow, as it's the same place Lucy and Billy used to meet up. This jealousy does eventually turn to murder, and while the situation in Snow's mind did call for it, again you see the cracks slipping. While Sejanus is meeting up with some rebels to go plan and run away, Snow also comes in, and then eventually Lucy Gray comes in as well. There's some mixing of facts, as Lucy Gray says that Snow is dating one of the other Cubbies, and Snow, while annoyed at this blatant lie, goes with it in order to protect both himself and Lucy Gray. However, Mayfair comes and overhears the conversation, and while about to leave, Snow, nearly without hesitation, fires at her, killing her. In a moment of kind of confusion, panic, and Snow's realization that if Mayfair and Billy Top got away, everything he's created would be ruined, he shoots Mayfair, and Billy Top is also killed. Lucy Gray is horrified, understandably, but Snow immediately jumps into action, ushering Lucy Gray on stage in order for her to have an alibi, and immediately trying to cover up his and Sejanus' tracks as the other rebel goes and hides with the guns. Sejanus is terrified, and so is Snow, but for different reasons. Sejanus is horrified for the murders, and Snow is terrified that the name of Snow will even more be destroyed. Even after all this time, Snow is still worried about himself. Not about Lucy Gray, not about Sejanus, himself and his image. Eventually, as the days go by, Snow begins to realize that he's probably safe. And then he's called to the office, and it turns out Sejanus has been convicted for treason. And while Snow is upset, he's more worried that Sejanus may have ratted him out. He's not worried for his friend, the man that he has called his brother, albeit while lying. He's worried that Sejanus spilled something. Sejanus is hung, and Snow is told to go to the hanging in order to fill ranks, and when Sejanus dies, all that he can hear is the Jabberjays repeating, ma, ma, ma. Snow is called back and immediately gone to the office, where he is convinced this is his last time as a peacekeeper before he is hung as well, but instead he is invited to join the officer ranks and is told he will be leaving the next morning. In response, he goes to Lucy Gray's in order to run away with her. But finally, we reach the breaking point of Snow's character. He slips while walking with Lucy Gray, saying he's murdered 3 people, not just one in the arena and Mayfair. When Lucy Gray questions why 3, Snow says jokingly that he killed himself when he goes to run away with her. While trekking to the lake, Snow realizes that this isn't for him, that while he thought he loves Lucy Gray, and he does, he doesn't love her more than the safety of a roof over his head. He doesn't love her more than 3 meals a day, or knowing when his next paycheck will come. He doesn't like the woods. He does indeed like the capital and the safety it brings. They eventually reach the lake and the concrete building, where they go to get some fish, gather some supplies, and wait out the rain until heading off. However, Lucy Gray, after going to collect some Katniss, doesn't come back, and Snow's mind begins turning and turning and turning, eventually convinced that Lucy Gray has figured out that he has killed Sejanus and is either going to murder him or tell the entire world. And so he takes one of the guns, the ones that he killed Mayfair with, and goes to find Lucy Gray. He's convinced himself he's only going to talk to her, but in reality his finger has already switched off the safety button and he starts shooting wildly into the forest. While Lucy Gray uses the mockingbirds to confuse him, Snow becomes more and more frustrated, simply spraying out a ton of bullets round and round, Predator style, into the woods and hoping that he hits Lucy Gray. Convinced that she's either dead or run away completely, goes back to the shack, drowns all of the guns, then heads back to the base camp, where he realizes it's only been a few hours and his bunkmates aren't even awake yet. He then goes, packs up his stuff, steals some of Sejanus' money, and goes off to officer camp. Snow begins his journey to officer camp, thinking it will lead him to District 2. However, he ends up in the capital, and is sent to Dr. Gall's office instead. She reveals that this was part of her plan all along, and he will be attending university for the foreseeable future. Classes start on Thursday. Snow is pleased, and even more pleased to hear that Dr. Gull has erased all information about this Hunger Games, and so everything with Lucy Gray will be gone. Not only will her name be forgotten, but he, essentially as the last person to see her alive, forgets, so will her memory. The Covey will find someone else to fill her place, and she will be forgotten. The girl in the rainbow dress with the snakes will disappear from memory, and he's happy about it. He doesn't want someone to love, he doesn't want someone who will challenge his views. He wants someone who will live with him, but who will never be able to take advantage of him with what he feels for them. Another kind of but another thing that you begin to see with Snow once he gets back to the capital is he pockets Janice's money he was going to give to Tigress and the Grandmam. He doesn't need to. At this point, Janice's family has bought back the Grandmam's house and are also paying the taxes and everything Snow could ask for, but he still pockets the money he specifically sent for the Grandmam and Tigress. It's just a little detail that again shows Snow's rapid fall towards becoming what we eventually see in the main trilogy. Within the last 50 pages, less, Collins turns this character Snow into someone we adore and someone we're rooting for, into the monster we eventually see for the last 3 books. It's not only an excellent page-turner, but is an excellent flip of this character we have grown to genuinely care for over the past few hundred pages. And you still feel for Snow in the end. You feel for Lucy Gray, of course, and you wish that they had stayed together, but you're happy that Snow has finally gotten his chance to reach the Academy. You're happy that Dr. Gall roots for him, and, in the end, you're happy that Snow poisons Dean Highbottom. He's been an asshole, and you still want Snow to land on top. You're glad that Tigress and the Grandmam have gotten their flat back, and while you hope the Covey are doing okay, you want Snow to succeed in his studies. We know where this story ends up, and yet Collins has managed to create an evil character, and yet make us root for him. There's a lot of things I like in this book, again, surprisingly so. But I do have some qualms. The majority of the things were almost the forced connection to the main trilogy. A repeated thought, especially once Snow goes to the district, is how much he hates Jabberjays and the Mockingjays. This, I feel, wasn't needed. We don't need an extra motivation for why Snow doesn't like Katniss. He cannot like Katniss because she's starting a rebellion that is single-handedly going to tear down everything he's worked for, and the entire nation and system that has worked for the past 75 to 100 years. Adding the whole thing of how Katniss's symbol and the symbol of the rebellion is the Mockingjay doesn't need to be bolstered more by the fact that he doesn't like Mockingjays to begin with. There's the idea that comes up of Snow isn't like his mother in many ways, but especially in the way where he doesn't like music. I think that's fine, and is a good character beat, especially because Lucy Gray fully represents music, represents the flow back and forth, and her beautiful song. And so that can be a dichotomy between Snow loves Lucy Gray, but doesn't love music, an integral part of her. We don't need to also add this Mockingjay just because it connects to Katniss. And there are a few things like that. The concrete shack that they go and visit by the lake is only really there, I would think, because that's the lake where Katniss used to go with her father. But this lake is an important thing for Katniss as it's memories with her father and also provides dry wood, a place to fish, etc. The lake provides good plot points, good scenery, and does eventually become quite important to the story, especially with the final scene where the guns are hidden. Again, it feels like something that became more important because it was a passing reference in the original 3. The lake that Katniss visits with her father and sometimes with Gale isn't an integral point of her character, isn't this huge thing. Neither is the concrete shack until eventually some people going to District 13 stop in. But it becomes a major focus in Songbirds that I doubt would happen if we didn't have it set up in the initial trilogy. It's an Easter egg, sure, but one that I think becomes so fundamental to the plot that it's really there because of the trilogy. Third, the songs from Lucy Gray. I genuinely appreciate the songs, not only in the original trilogy, but in Songbirds. The ones that Collins writes are beautiful, and the ones that Lucy Gray sings are also ever-present and impactful. The hanging tree, and the song that comes with it is an important part of Snow's interactions within the district and meeting up with Lucy Gray. And so I understand that reference. They meet up at the hanging tree, and again, it's a nice little nod to the trilogy. I do think it plays some of the same role the Shack in the Lake does, but it's a pretty song, I'll take it. The one that I felt was most forced was the Under the Meadow song that Katniss both sings to Prim and Rue. Under the Meadow doesn't have the same thematic importance within the song, within the scene that Lucy Gray plays, that necessitates? That's not a word. Dear gods. Okay. Under the Meadow doesn't need to be there. Again, it's a beautiful song, and writing songs are bloody hard, but again, it feels like just a nod to the original trilogy that doesn't need to be there. We're meant to read that and say, hey, I know that, Katniss did it when she was singing to Rue. And so there's not the same impact, at least for me, of hearing the song I've heard before and Lucy Gray sing it, but there's meant to be just because we've heard it before in the original trilogy. There's this thing that happens a lot in the Hobbit movies, which, dear gods, I'll get to that eventually when I want to spend 20 hours more of my life slaving away. But there's this thing the Hobbit films often do where we're meant to like a scene because it relates to Lord of the Rings instead of liking it because it's a good scene. There will be moments where the Ringwraith theme will come up even when Ringwraiths aren't there because the audience is meant to go, hey, I know that theme and thus I'm gonna like this one. I feel like it's kind of the same thing in these scenes in Songbirds, where the audience, hey, I like this because I've seen it before, because it relates back to the original trilogy. And there's no real connection. There's no reason for the Covey to sing this exact song at this exact moment, except for Collins pushing us to say, hey, look what I did. There's probably a few more. You made me fall for a fictional bad character. Well, I've probably forgotten quite a lot of things and be very annoyed with myself while editing back and/or tomorrow morning when I'm like, oh wait, shit, what about that? I just wanted to record this quick thing, just kind of spewing my thoughts. I know it was all over the place, and I promise when I release my major Hunger Games video, there's going to be a script for that. Yeah, but again, I just wanted to spew my thoughts. I finished this yesterday. I finished the last, third of it just on the couch, just, swiping through, and was dead shocked by the ending. And so I wanted to get it out, just, real quick, share some thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. And anything else, really. Are you guys looking forward to the movie? Do you think that they're going to do it correctly? I've loved the trailer. Now that I've watched it knowing the book, I've loved the trailer. Fucking star-casted. Bloody hell. Not what I expected. I hope they get it right. I already have my issues with Lucy Gray's dress. But, just because I had a very specific mind for what Lucy Gray's dress was, but that's okay. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts, if you have any suggestions for anything I should read, either read next or review next, and best of luck! I'll see you guys soon. Mwah.